These are things we've been talking about today. Credibility, validity, reliability, generalizability, and keeping records. What do we mean when we say credibility? What is credibility in research?
Expertise and trustworthiness. And goodwill.
Expertise, trustworthiness, goodwill, okay.
Research and credible research that's not just Wikipedia.
Okay, what else?
Factual.
Factual.
Yeah,
Okay, so we need that. Some expertise. I should have been writing this as you were talking about it, Tom. See, I'm not in it yet. Expertise, what else did you say?
Trustworthiness.
Trustworthy, okay. Okay, so you say factual. Okay, how do you know it's factual?
Because it can be vetted by other people.
Can be vetted?
Yeah.
Okay, what else? You look like you just got something to say. You just-
No, I mean, it's kind of along the same line, like a peer review type thing. That's better kind
Yes and no. Peer reviewed. Timely? Does it need to be timely? Yeah? Think about if you're doing studies on, I come back to this a lot, but it's a very easy example. I'm doing a study on a certain population, their birth rates, their death rates. I'm going to look at census numbers. Well, is it going to do me any good to be doing research over the past 10 years and look at census numbers from 1990 or 1900, excuse me?
Probably not.
Not really. Okay, I need more timely data. Okay, what else? Verifiable. Verifiable. Objective. What do we mean when we say objective?
Not biased as much.
Okay, what do we mean when we say not biased?
It's not influenced by the researcher.
Not influenced by the researcher?
Yeah. And
The researcher has nothing to gain by what he or she is saying.
Researcher doesn't necessarily have anything to gain, but also, like we like to say, the researcher doesn't have a dog in the fight.
Right.
Okay? It's not somebody who is going to try and find just the data that fits their point of view, right? I'm not going to, if I'm doing a study on politics, I'm not going to go just to the Republican or just to the Democrat. I'm going to get a mixture of all parties, not just Republican and Democrat either, all the other parties as well.
I think another thing you can find credibility is like the author's past work, perhaps, like what they've done in the field before. I guess if you're thinking,
That kind of goes to your expertise.
well, yeah,
But yeah.
I guess that's true.
Just a question, what does can be vetted mean?
Can be vetted.
Yeah.
Just like, so, I guess it's kind of a journalistic term that I picked up from watching the newsroom, but if you're researching like a source or researching a scholarly journal written by someone, you can understand that they have actual qualifications if they're making like their own opinionated statement, and it's not just someone that's blowing smoke.
Okay.
You can actually prove it. You have people that can back it up,
Okay.
evidence to support it. Okay.
It's kind of like proving the trustworthiness of it.
Hmm.
It's kind of like proving the trustworthiness.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
combination of the two.
What about seminal works? Are they important to include? Add your credibility? What do we mean when we say seminal works?
The original.
The original, the first work, the one that established it.
I think that's establishing your expertise. I mean, if you haven't done anything at all, then I don't know that you can establish expertise. So seminal work kind of leads you there.
Yeah. It demonstrates you've done the homework for one thing, that you know where it started, and you know how it grew. Okay. You also want to show the evolution and the growth, and you want to show some variety. So as you're going through and you're doing your research and you're getting your literature review together, show how this topic has evolved, how talking about parenting styles, how that has evolved from this seminal work, the first study on parenting, or the first study on parenting that used the, what is it called? The
Typology,
type, well, the model that you were looking at.
Pomeran's typology of parenting.
Yeah, that. So you're gonna do the first time that study was introduced, okay? And then talk about different studies that have used it in different contexts and different ways they've used it. You're gonna look at how they've evolved that typology, because didn't it start out with 3 and went to 4? So you wanna show that sort of thing too, okay? That's gonna gain you credibility, because it's gonna demonstrate you've done the research, you've done the homework, you've exhausted the research, the literature, to find out how it has grown, where it developed, and where it came from, okay? Questions on credibility? Okay, validity. What is validity? What do we mean when we talk about validity?
Validating, so is it worth studying, or I don't know where I'm going, I just ran with valid, I don't know.
Rachel?
Isn't credibility is more about describing the researcher, and validity is more about describing the facts, or the information that is presented? So if the information is valid, it's factual.
This credibility deals with the researcher, but it also deals with, as you're looking up information, as you're analyzing documents and data of whether or not to use it, you're looking at these things to see if that information is credible. Okay? Did the document you looked at, was the person who wrote it, was that person an expert? Are they trustworthy? Can you check their facts? Did peers evaluate to determine whether or not it's worthy of being shown? Because that's why we put so much stock in peer-reviewed journals, is professionals who have expertise in this field have determined, yep, they've vetted it. Yep, it's good enough. They've done the research well. They've gotten have a good solid literature review. Methodology was appropriate. Yep, that's a good one. We're going to go with that. So you as the researcher are analyzing these to determine whether or not they should go into your study and your literature review, and in turn, by doing that, you are gaining credibility with your readers. That, okay, this person now got the credible research, therefore she's credible. Okay.
So validity, I mean, like a measurable approach, or trying to think of
It's a measurable approach in quantitative research. It's not quite so measurable in qualitative.
Validity, to me, does the instrument work to support your hypothesis? So like you were saying, timely, if I'm looking at birth rates, it's not valid to go back to a certain time because I'm looking at birth rates in this time. So
Right track.
you're wanting to validate the information that you're gaining.
I want you to say one phrase, Alex.
Double and triple checking.
No, that's not the phrase.
Is that it measures
Close.
what it says it's gonna measure?
Are you measuring what you want to measure?
Baseball.
Is your study measuring or testing what you want to measure or test? You don't try and find out how tall somebody is by putting them on a scale. That scale is going to tell you how much you weigh. It's not going to tell you how tall you are. So is your study measuring what you want to measure? Okay? This is quantitative or qualitative research. How do we find this out? What are some of the key factors to determining this, whether it's valid or not?
Well, your study parameters. I mean, you gotta know what those are.
And which are what?
Like you're talking
You were on the right track with what you said with the birth rates.
Yeah,
Let me give you the first one. Population. If I'm doing research on birth rates, how do we do this? Birth rates in Southwest Missouri, I don't need to be looking at and interviewing people in Northeast Kansas. I need to be talking to people in Southwest Missouri. I need to be looking at documents from Southwest Missouri. Okay. What else?
time frame.
Time frame. What are some of the ways we gather data in qualitative research? Interviewing, kind of coming in here.
Observation.
Observation, so we're observing the right people in the right time frame. What's the third thing we look at?
Documents. Setting.
That's part of your observation.
Documents.
Documents. Are you looking at the appropriate documents? I'm not going to go to the local mortuary or morgue and look at death rates if I want to look at birth rates. Okay, I'm going to go look at that documentation. Make sense? Okay. How do you determine what these study parameters are?
Wasn't it based off of what you've decided from your literature review? Am I right?
You'll be so surprised, Alex.
Oh, what, I'm at 33% today, you know, I'm hitting pretty, you know.
Comes from your literature review. Comes from your literature review. Because you need to know, all right, well, I mean, I've already decided I want to look at birth rates in southwest Missouri. That's what I know I want to look at. But I'm going to my literature review to find out what kinds of things do I need to be examining. Who do I need to be talking to? What kind of research has been done on this topic in the past? Okay. Again, that goes to your credibility, but you see how credibility and validity work hand in hand? This is helping you build a solid literature review so you can have validity. Oh. Okay. Funny how that works. It also comes from aligning your research questions with all of this stuff. Make sure your research questions are asking the appropriate people in the appropriate places, within the appropriate time, the appropriate things. And your research questions, again, get developed and refined from a solid literature review. Just want the camera. Hand it back.
So if credibility goes to literature reviews and the literature reviews go to validity, then validity would go to one of those three.
What?
Generalizability, keeping marriage, and reliability. Validity's going to one of those three. I feel it. I'm very linear, sorry.
Well, that helps with this. What's reliability? What is reliability in research?
Getting the same answer over and over.
Yeah.
Can the
Trends will stay
study,
the same.
not necessarily the same answer,
Be replicated.
can the study
The 95th percentile.
be replicated? Okay. Can this study be replicated? Keep in mind that in quantitative research, because we're going so much for this, so reliability and generalizability work well together. We're trying to generalize it. So we want to make sure that the results from this study are reliable. Because if they are, if I survey 2,000 people and I get, I'm going to be positive, 1,200 responses, and I have 95% confidence that these results are accurate, I want to make sure that when I survey another population of 2,000, I'm going to get similar results. That 2,000 means it's generalizable. Okay, that it's a random sample of my population. I've gotten those results. If I go to another part of that population, another random sample that's very similar, I can generalize it and it can give me similar results. Okay, that's what I'm going to expect. Why is this not as big a deal in qualitative research?
Because you can't completely, perfectly replicate any qualitative research, I think.
because of a different, done at a different time, you may not have the same population, and your population is probably gonna be smaller, and everybody's different. It's just more individualized.
Validity, credibility, critical in qualitative research. Reliability in the sense that we talk about in research, not as critical, because you're not interviewing a big enough or doing a focus group with a big enough or doing a case study of a big enough population that you could generalize it to a greater population. Okay? So it's not as critical. We like to be able to find out that the method we use, the procedures we use, we could replicate that. But if I'm studying birth rates in Southwest Missouri, and I choose to use a specific methodology, I can replicate that in South Central Alaska and get totally different results. It's not because the study wasn't valid or reliable, it's just because that's two very different populations. Okay? Still looking at the same data, still looking at the same documents, interviewing the same kinds of people, but I'm in a totally different area. And I think we all agree that Southwest Missouri is much different from South Central Alaska. Okay? So you just want to make sure that you can actually do this study again, recognizing you're probably going to get different results. Okay? Or not necessarily probably, but quite possibly going to get very different results. Does that make sense? Leah, you're looking perplexed.
I just think quantitative research is the same way.
But you've got a much better chance of being generalizable because you're taking such a large sample.
Sure, but.
If you've got 10,000 people in the population, in your total population, and your sample is 10, like you would do when you're doing in-depth interviews, that's not a very good study design. You want a much larger, that's where you need to look at the confidence interval and say, what's the 95% confidence interval, what rate, what sample population, what random sample population do I need to get so I can be generalizable? Because even in quantitative research, a sample of the population doesn't guarantee reliability. Because if you take a convenient sample of 2,000 people, that's not very generalizable. Because it's not random. Everybody in that population of 10,000 didn't have an equal chance of being a part of the study. Okay?
But your results could still be very, very different if your population is different and quantitative. Is it just about the study though, not about the results, is what makes it reliable? Okay.
Yeah, you want to have a chance to be, because they could be very different. I mean, we could do this great study, we could have everything built out perfectly. We could do a random sample of 2,000 people from that population of 10,000 and get this result. And then we take those 10,000 or those 2,000 out and do a random sample of another 2,000. Now, understand that I've gone from 1/5 of the population to 1/4 of the population now. And do a random sample of them and get a totally different result. Because they're still people. But I've got a much better chance of it being reliable and generalizable to the whole population because I am within that population. I did get a random sample. So that's what makes it reliable. Okay, John.
It went into that, so it's fine.
Okay. All right. Generalizability. We've kind of beaten this one to the ground. How can you generalize qualitative research? And question number 2 is, do you want to?
You can't and no.
I concur.
Rachel says you can't generalize it, and no. You don't want to.
I think you said it already. You can generalize the study itself in terms of how you collect the information, so that.
Yeah, but that's not what we want to generalize, is the method.
Yeah, right, but I'm just saying that can be generalized, so you could take this and then take it to southern Alaska and replicate it. That would be the only general.
If you do the study here and determine that it is reliable and credible,
Right.
okay, this study design can be replicated.
Yes.
Results probably aren't going to be, or possibly aren't going to be, because the population's different.
Generally speaking, this design could be used anywhere. That's what I'm saying.
Okay?
Could you generalize results from a qualitative study by doing an additional quantitative study? For example, In my interviews, I found a common theme of people not knowing how they changed parenting behaviors from generation to generation. Could I then do a quantitative study where that is one of my questions?
Yes
So then
and
I
no.
could confirm that with this bigger population, people don't know how they change their behaviors.
Yes and no. Your qualitative study isn't going to be generalizable. What you do from the quantitative will be. And the way you're explaining it, your qualitative is going to help you build your quantitative.
Yes.
And then your quantitative will become generalizable. Your qualitative will help you gain validity in your quantitative study. Because you have interviewed, it's called giving it content reliability, or content validity, because, which is reliability, because you've gone to people in that field, for lack of a better term, parents. You've gone to them and talked to them, and their responses have helped you make your quantitative instrument. So that gives you content validity, which gives you reliability, and then you take that out to do the study. And then those results are generalizable. Make sense?
So it's too much of a stretch to answer this question.
Well, it works, but it's, the qualitative isn't generalizable.
Yeah.
The quantitative is.
So I was gonna say, like, for qualitative studies, is it better to do mixed method to be reliable?
But there's not really a need to be reliable in
There's not a
qualitative.
need to be reliable.
Because what is our goal in qualitative research?
Understanding.
Yeah.
To understand and interpret.
Yeah.
But you, the researcher, are the one doing the interpreting. And I might interpret the exact same results much differently from Mel.
Right, so we don't need to focus too much on the life. Okay.
Focus here
That's what I was.
and here.
Okay.
I do a case study, accidental one by growing up. I know how my grandmother acted, so I know how grandmothers act.
Right,
Yeah,
Can't generalize like that.
right,
right.
exactly. Generalizability, it can be done in qualitative research, and you may want it to be done in qualitative research. How is it done?
Depending on how many you take from a specific sample, or how big the
Understood.
population is, and how big your sample is, comparatively speaking. Whereas you do quantitative, if you have a population of 10,000 and you get 2,000 responses, you can generalize. If your population in a qualitative study is 30, and your sample is 15, would you be able to generalize with themes, possibly?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 students in this class. 8 are male, 6 are female, 1 international. Is there another international student in here? Oh, 2 international, sorry. 2 international students, okay? I don't know what our population is for our grad program, but I think it's around 60. So you are almost a full fourth of our graduate program in the Department of Communication. I don't know the breakdown of international students versus US students. I'm not sure the breakdown of male versus female. I'd say this is a pretty good random sample of our class, of our graduate program, okay? If I did a study with you all, if I did a focus group with you all and got your responses, I could probably generalize that pretty well to the graduate program at UCM, to the communications graduate program at UCM, okay? I probably could not generalize it to the graduate program at UCM. I certainly couldn't generalize it to the student population at the university because that includes graduate and undergraduate. But I could generalize it to a smaller population. It all goes back to the size of the population and the size of the sample. That's what determines if it's generalizable.
Size does matter.
Size does matter, that's right.
Don't be gross.
I may get
You went there.
I may get a fourth of the population. But if it is a convenient sample of that population, then I may, what I say, I get a fourth of the population. If it's just a convenient sample, that's still not very generalizable because it's not random. That's what makes something generalizable, okay? The size of the population and the size of the sample. All right, now, that's how you make it generalizable. The thing with qualitative research that keeps us from doing this too much is typically we don't do a qualitative study with a population of 60. There's probably gonna be a bigger population. And so 10 to 15 is about as many people as you want in any, whether you're doing in-depth interviews or focus groups, 10 to 15 people is about how many you want to have in that, okay? A case study never is going to be generalizable because that's one specific place in one specific time, all right? Grounded theory, you're not really going for generalizability, you're trying to develop a theory. Okay? So, I kind of answered it for you. Why would we want it to be generalizable?
Like you said, it's on a smaller scale, so if you were trying to make a change within the graduate community and communications, and you did a random sample like this in a focus group, then you would get kind of an impact and be able to weigh it.
Yeah. When we were doing the focus groups to do make the merge of journalism and broadcast media into digital media production, we had a pretty good random sample because of the classes we took to do the focus groups. So we could pretty well generalize those results and the opinions of our students to the entire student population in those two areas. Okay. If we wanted to make some changes or get opinions of and beliefs of our graduate students in our graduate program, we want to generalize that, but we wouldn't want to do all 60. Okay, and because I want attitudes and beliefs and opinions, I don't want to do a quantitative study. I want to do qualitative. I want to get you to come out more. I want you to go more in depth. I want some meat, some body. Okay. Make sense? Back at you.
So just because you can generalize in qualitative research, doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Yes. It doesn't necessarily mean you should want to. I mean, if I want to generalize, do research on a particular film that's going to be played, and I want to do interviews and get the beliefs and attitudes of the people who would watch it, and I wanted to generalize that to the U.S. population, you know how many film screenings I'd have to do? A lot. And by the time I got done doing the screenings and writing it up and putting it out there, it's been released and already grossed $10 million. So, who cares at that point? Okay. Last thing, keeping records. This kind of goes back to our discussion from Tuesday. Very, very simple. What works for you? When I did my dissertation, I told you how I did my literature review. I printed off at least the abstract, maybe the article. I started putting them into piles where they related to roles in PR, gender in PR, leadership style in public relations, and I started making stats. And then I got different colored folders. And I put those things in those different colored folders. And then when I was writing my notes, because I still did a lot of stuff longhand, when I was writing my notes about a specific topic, I had a colored pen that corresponded with it. Because that's what helped me keep it in my head and keep it straight, that I was on this topic, then this topic, then this topic. My wife looked at me and thought, dear God, you're spending so much time organizing this, you could be done writing the thing by now. And then I wanted to throw the stuff at her, but then I would have lost all my notes.
But they were color coded, so you've been able to put them back in the proper order.
Then there's that, but I know that.
I could see how that'd be really great too. I think I might adopt that. Does that kind of get a visual thing I'm remembering? If, that was written in red, so it was on the hand.
Once it got into the computer, I would highlight, you know, you can go in Max and highlight the folder. I would highlight what that folder was and matched up the colors. And then I found I was like duplicating folders within the same folder, and then I really got screwed up because I could remember which one was the most recent. That was fun. Okay. So as you're doing your transcribing of your notes, from your interviews, what method works best for you? Is it the 2-column? Is it the page where you number it? Is it the Q&A format where you have the question, then person 1's answer, person 2 answer, person 3 answer? When you're doing your document analysis, you're going to have a folder here for government documents, and one over here for our interview transcriptions, and one over here for newspaper articles. How are you going to keep your records? What works for you? Come up with a method and come up with it quickly. I would strongly, as strongly as I can, encourage you, as you're doing your literature review, whenever you look up an article, do the citation. If you use the library database, there's a couple of keys you can punch and it'll create a works cited for you. And it's all there, all laid out for you. I think it even has the, what is that, the number they have now that doesn't make any sense.
DOI.
The DOI, which is so stupid. Why do we have that? We have everything else you need. I don't know why that's important, but apparently now it is. Unfortunately, when I put that in for my advisors, they said, what is this? I said, it's the DOI. And they went, get that out of there. We don't need that. We got everything else. Thank you. Now that I spent a week going in and finding those again. But get those. Put your works cited together because you may decide, I don't want that one. I don't need it. It's really simple to highlight and hit the delete button. It's really hard to go find that article again. Okay? And when you are going through what you've written, you have to make sure that every in-text citation matches a citation on your references page. And if it's in your references section, there better be an in-text. Okay? So what you need to do is, I guess in Word there's a way to do in-text and the works cited. I never did figure that out. That would have taken me longer than writing my dissertation. Go to your in-text, highlight it, go to your reference page, find it, highlight it. Go to the next citation, highlight it, go to the next one in your references, highlight it. So you make sure you match up, because that is something that your advisors will look at. They'll get that detail.